Nun Hey 55, and we are on Nun Dalet Amid Beis 54b. Shortly after the Mishnah, the Mishnah had said that some places is accustomed not to work on Tisha B'Av, and some places are accustomed to work on Tisha B'Av. And the Gemara quoted a statement of Shmuel that in Bavel there are no communal fasts, and the communal fast is not referring to the general fast that we have on 10th of Tevis and the 17th of Tammuz, etc., but rather the fasts that come for rain. And Tisha B'Av is the only one. And the Gemara thought that that perhaps what it means is that in regards to whether or not Bein Hashmashas, the twilight between sunset and when the stars come out, whether you have to begin the fast already at sunset, or do you have time until it's for sure night before you have to begin the fast. And the Gemara quoted a Mishnah that said that there's no distinction between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, only in a matter of doubt. So the Gemara first thought that what that means is at the time of doubt, at twilight zone, when we don't know if it's the next day yet or not. And the Gemara says, no, we're not referring to that. We're referring to when you don't know whether the new moon has been seen on one day or the next, and when Rosh Chodesh was, and therefore by Tisha B'Av, which is a rabbinic fast, it's midrabanan because it's about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, which obviously is not a part of the Torah itself, which happened later than the Torah, and so therefore it's not a Torah obligated fast. Whereas Yom Kippur, which is a Torah obligated fast, you'd have to be strict in certain scenarios. So the Gemara now starts with Dorash Rava, a drasha that Rava said in the halachas of fasting, and this is about 10-12 lines after the Mishnah, midway on 54b, Nun Dalet Amid Beis. Dorash Rava. Rava said, Ubaris umeinikais misanais mashlimas. Whether a woman is nursing or pregnant, she has to fast and complete the fast. Just as Yom Kippur, so too on Tisha B'Av, pregnant women and nursing women have to fast. Obviously, if it's not a danger to them, if they're doing well enough, so they have to fast just as on Yom Kippur. Ubein hashmasha shalei asa, and here it says clearly that the bein hashmashas, the twilight between sunset and the stars come out, are prohibited, and you have to fast. V'chein amar mishmei the Rabbi Yochanan, and so too was it said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Now the Gemara challenges, really, miyamar Rabbi Yochanan achi, did Rabbi Yochanan say that Rabbi Yochanan Tisha B'Av eina ketainas tzibur? But Rabbi Yochanan said Tisha B'Av is not like the fast for a drought, which means that it doesn't have the same level of stringency as a tainas tzibur, a fast that we have for drought in Eretz Yisrael. My lavla bein hashmashas. Wouldn't you say that Rabbi Yochanan means that it's not like a fast in as much as that Tisha B'Av does not have, you don't have to begin the fast prior to bein hashmashas, prior to sunset? Like l'melacha. He's referring to melacha, that Tisha B'Av is not like the communal fasts, which are for the drought, where in a drought you're not allowed to you're not allowed to work, and Tisha B'Av you're allowed to work. So Gemara says, wait, malacha about the work. Tanina, that's our Mishnah, which says that if it's a custom if you're in a place that the custom is to do work, then you do the work. And makim she'einosin, is in a place that the custom is not to do work, einosin, you don't do it. So you see that it's based on custom. How can we say that it's the same as it's not the same as a communal fast? But here too, there are some places of custom that you don't do work. So and even the end of the Mishnah, we had Rav Shimon Gamliel says that a person should make himself strict, and a person should make himself strict and like a Talmud Chacham, and not work on Tisha B'av. That's he's only saying you're allowed to do that. It won't look like you're being haughty, but it doesn't mean that you're actually you're actually prohibited in the work. So in regards to what did Rabbi Yochanan say that Tisha B'av is not like a drought fast, but it is prohibited in Bein Hashmashos. Elamai eina k'tainas tzibur letfilas ne'ilah. This that it says that it's not like this that Rabbi Yochanan had to tell us that it's not like a drought fast, a tainas tzibur, is in regards to ne'ilah. As we'll see in the Gemara in Tainis, that when they enacted the fasts for a drought, there were progression of fasts, a progression of series of fasts, and they would include the tefillah of ne'ilah and additional brachos and Shemona Esrei. So ne'ilah, which we say on Yom Kippur, which would be said on a drought fast as well, would not be said on Tisha B'av, and that's what he meant. It's that Tisha B'av is not like a tainas tzibur in regards to that you don't add the tefillah of ne'ilah at the end of the day. The Gemara says, wait, but Rabbi Yochanan says in the Gemara in Brachos that it's okay for a person to daven at any time in the day and say extra tefillos, and in fact, it would be wonderful. Halavai. We wish that people would daven the entire day. Praying, davening, that's a great connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it would be important, and that's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. So what do you mean that on Tisha B'av there's no ne'ilah? If he wants, he can say so. So the Gemara says, yeah, of course, but hasam chayva, the difference is that on a fast for the drought, on a tainas tzibur, it's obligatory. Rishus. And Rabbi Yochanan just says a person's allowed to add other tefillas in the day. That doesn't mean that he's obligated, and that's the distinction that Rabbi Yochanan means that Tisha B'av is not like a regular fast. Or what we could say is that what it means that it's not like a fast day, that the 24 brachas, the additional brachas that were added, 6 brachas for the fast, are not added on Tisha B'av. However, Rav Papa says, you know what? When Rabbi Yochanan said originally that the Tisha B'av is not like a fast day, that he did say so in regards to Bein Hashmashas, in regards to the twilight after sundown, it's already prohibited. Even though he had said that and we asked the contradiction, because he had said that Bein Hashmashas is prohibited, and we thought that when he said it's not like that Tisha B'av is not like the fasts of a drought, like a tainas tzibur, what he meant, he didn't mean like the first fast, Eda Karishonas. It's not like the first series of fasts, which were not so strict, and they're indeed the first series of fasts for the rain. Actually, Bein Hashmashas, the twilight after Shkia, after sunset, you don't have to begin the fast yet until it's nightfall, and that's when you have to start the fast. So that's what Rabbi Yochanan is saying. He says Tisha B'av is not like those original, the first series of fasts, which are lenient during twilight, during Bein Hashmashas. Ela kachronis, rather they are like the later series of fasts, which you do have to be strict from sunset at the beginning of Bein Hashmashas, beginning of twilight, and so too Tisha B'av, you have to begin the fast already at Shkia. V'asur, and it's prohibited. So we ask a question. We're still trying to figure out the distinction between Tisha B'av and Yom Kippur, and the comparison that Shmuel made. And so we say, the only distinction we saw before there is between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur the Gemara at this point thinks that it means the only distinction is that Tisha B'Av is its doubt is permissible, and Yom Kippur the doubt is strict. My sveika mutar. What does it mean that in its doubt you're exempt or it's permissible by Tisha B'Av? La bein hashmoshes shelo. Doesn't it mean bein hashmoshes when it's twilight that you're allowed to eat until the stars come out? Like we said before, no, it's for the if you don't know which day was Rosh Chodesh, that you have to you can be lenient by Tisha B'Av, but in certain cases by Yom Kippur you would fast 2 days. So Gemara says, wait, but based on this, the way we understand it, halachal dvarim zev zeh shavim. But based on everything else, besides for the 2 days of Yom Kippur and the 1 day of Tisha B'Av, the zev zeh shavim, they're going to be exactly equal. Messiah Rabbi Lazar said, wouldn't we say that support to Rabbi Lazar? Now Rabbi Lazar also le'ladam sheyeshet etzbay b'mayim b'Tisha B'Av kederach shasa le'yeshet etzbay b'Yom Kippur. That you're not allowed to stick your finger in water on Tisha B'Av, just like you're not allowed to stick your finger into water on Yom Kippur. Just like on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to wash yourself in any manner unless it's necessary for hygiene, and then to the bare minimum. So too on Tisha B'Av, it's prohibited, and this should be support because it says that everything is the same between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, besides for if you have a doubt of which day was Rosh Chodesh. And to that we have a contradiction. But we have another statement that says Tisha B'Av and the communal fasts for rain, for drought, and there's no distinction between them. That one is prohibited in work. The communal fast for drought, the Tainus Tzibur, are going to be prohibited in work. And Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to work. As long as that's the custom of the place. Which indicates, but for all other matters, they're equal. But wait, we learned in regards to a communal fast, Tanya, this that we said that you're not allowed to wash it only means you're not allowed to take a full bath. Washing your face and your hands and your feet on the communal drought fast, you're allowed to do that. And that was not included in the prohibition. So how can you tell me that Tisha B'Av is like Yom Kippur, which indicates in all matters, even in washing your hands, even for a tiny bit, whereas it says that there's no distinction between Tisha B'Av and communal fasts, only in regards to work, but that means that you're allowed to, that it's the same, and you're allowed to wash your hands and face and feet. Amar Papa. So Papa says no. We're misunderstanding the ein bains. When these brises of this Mishnah is saying ein bain, there's no distinction between Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, or Tisha B'Av and Tainus Tzibur and the communal fast for drought. It does not mean to say that Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur are exactly the same besides for this. The ein bains, there's no distinction, is in regards to Tisha B'Av is not lenient, more lenient than Yom Kippur, only in this one matter. Only in the matter of doubt is Tisha B'Av more lenient, that if you don't know which day it is, Tisha B'Av is lenient, you only do 1 day, and Yom Kippur, you're going to do 2 days if you don't know which day was Rosh Chodesh. And only in regards to one matter of work is Tisha B'Av going to be more lenient than the communal fasts. And only in the leniencies is what these statements are making. So Tisha B'Av is more lenient only in one way than Yom Kippur, and that's that's the doubt. And it's more lenient than there are no leniencies for Tisha B'Av more than communal fasts, only in one matter in regards to work. But in all other matters, Tisha B'Av is going to be stricter or the same as the others. Tana kula tani, that the statement, the Tana, is only teaching leniencies of Yom Kippur. There's only one leniency here and only one leniency in comparison to here, and that's it. So that's the meaning of the Ein Bains. There's no distinction in leniencies for Tisha B'Av. That's the top words of Nun Hey Amud Aleph, and we begin Nun Hey Amud Aleph 55a. And it says in our Mishnah that in all places a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, righteous person, would not work, and that everybody's allowed to make themselves a Talmud Chacham. It's okay, and it doesn't look like yuhara. It doesn't look like haughtiness. Lememra, the author of that statement about that Talmud Chacham, you can make yourself like a Talmud Chacham, is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Lememra, that seems to tell us that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is not concerned about looking haughty by doing something different than the community. Rabbanan Savri Chashina Liyura, and the Chachamim say, we're concerned that it's going to look haughty. But we have a different halacha elsewhere. The Tanan we learned, the Mishnah in Bracha says that a chassan, somebody at the first night of their marriage after the marriage ceremony, the couple are going to be together for the first time, and the mitzvah of Shema comes as the evening comes. So he has to say Shema and daven, and he's greatly distracted. He's not going to be able to focus on Shema because he is it's his wedding night, and he's focused on his mitzvah of the night of caring for his wife and being together, and so he can't say Shema, and so he's exempt. And if somebody can properly focus, so he's able to say Shema. So if somebody is able to focus and wants to say the Shema, he says Shema. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, not anybody who wants to take Hashem's name and say the Shema and call themselves someone who can focus can take that. That's haughtiness. So don't go to Minyan that night and daven because you can't focus. Not anybody is allowed to take that stand. Meaning he's concerned it looks like you're being haughty by showing up to shul and davening on that night. I'm greater. I can focus. Amar Rav Yochanan machlefes hashita. So Rav Yochanan says we must say that in one of two places the statement needs to be swapped, either here or there, because we have to make it consistent. Rav Yochanan is concerned with yuhara or not concerned with yuhara, and in both places. Sorry, not Rabbi Yochanan, Shimon Gamliel is concerned with yuhara in both places, or he's not concerned in both places. However, Rav Shisha Breda Arvidi says, Amar lo tepach. You don't have to swap the opinions, and it's not a contradiction. Over there, it's one scenario. Here, it's another scenario, and there's a distinction. The Rabbanan leikashil, hacha. There's no contradiction in the Rabbanan. Hacha, kivan the kuli alma avdi malacha. In regards to Tisha B'Av, since everybody is working, v'ihu loy avid malacha mechzik yura. So he's going to stand out from everyone else. If this is a place that everybody works on Tisha B'Av and he's not, so he's clearly making a statement, I am a Talmud Chacham, because he's distinct from the rest of the people. And that the Chachamim consider Yura, Mechzik Yura. That looks like he's being haughty. Aval Hassam, but by Shema, everybody's davening. He's the only person that would be exempt. So when he comes to daven, he's just making himself equal to everyone else. He's not more than everyone else. He's not doing different than everyone else. So even though he's saying that he's, he can focus, but he's just doing what's normal for everyone else. Aval Hasam Kiva the Kuli Alma Kari Nami Kari. Everybody's saying Shema. He's also saying Shema. It doesn't look like he's being haughty. However, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel sees it the opposite way. The Rabbi Shimon Gamliel like Kasha, that's not a contradiction either. Hasamu to be in a kavana. There, you have to be able to intend well. We understand that he's not going to be able to focus on the Shema and say it correctly. So Mechzi Kiyura, if he tries to do it, it looks like he's being haughty. Aval Hacha Delay Mechzi Kiyura. But over here, it doesn't look like he's doing anything wrong. It doesn't look like he's being haughty. Amri Malacha Delay, because the fact that he's not working could just be he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have work today. Go out to the market. You'll see how many people are without work. In the beginning of the Perek, the Mishnah began with the halachas of Erev Tisha B'Av, Erev Pesach, not working. In some places, the custom from in the morning. In some places, a custom that they would work in the morning, and you would only stop work at Chatzos at midday. Here, the Gemara is going to tell us the opinion of the Chachamim. The Mishnah says the Chachamim say Yehuda Ya'isem Alacha Rabbi Pesachim at Chatzos in Yehuda. In Judea, they would do work until Chatzos on Erev Pesach, and in the Galilee, they would not do work at all. And the Gemara asks this: that it says that they would not do work at all in the Galilee, Halayla, the night before as well. What's the halacha? So B'Shamai would say, indeed, they wouldn't do work even the night before, like a regular yontif. And Basil said, no, the night before you can do work, through the night you can do work until Hanetzachama, until sunrise. The Gemara asks, in the previous Mishnah, at the beginning of the Perek, you mentioned it as a custom. Some places the custom is this, some places the custom is that. And now you're saying it in the terms of prohibition. What's going on? So there's no contradiction. It's just two opinions. Between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana we learned, Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, in Judea and Yehuda, they would do work on Erev Pesach until midday. And in the Galilee, they wouldn't do work at all on Erev Pesach. Amale Rabbi Meir, to which Rabbi Meir responded to Rabbi Yehuda and said, Ma Raya Yehuda v'Galil Lakan, why are you bringing statements as if Yehuda is a total prohibition, or in the Galil, in the Galil is a total prohibition. Yehuda, it's from Chatzos, but they would do work as if like this is a matter of prohibition, permitted, prohibited. It's a custom, and in every place, Elamakim Shanagu lasses malacha, Makim Shanagu Shaloi lasses within each place according to its custom. Now, since Rabbi Meir is responding to him in custom, in that it's a custom, you see that Rabbi Yehuda was of the opinion that it's a prohibition, and that's the distinction of the two Mishnahs. Now, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that on the 14th you can do work. Now, to understand this Gemara, we have to just refresh on the halachas of chadash. The Torah prohibits the new grains unless the grain has already been taken root and is growing by the time the Omer offering is brought on the 16th day of Nisan, meaning the morning of the second day of Pesach. They would bring the Karban Omer, a barley offering of the new grain, and that's when you can start harvesting the fields, and any grains that had taken root at that point would now be considered old wheat, old grains from the previous year, and are permissible for the coming year. But anything that had not taken root prior to the Karban Omer is going to be prohibited as chadash, as new grain, until the next year Pesach, until the next Karban is brought. Another halacha that's important to understand in this Gemara is the concept of miksas hayom kekulo, that if you have a partial day, it counts as a full day. So when we count days, an hour, a minute before sunset counts as day one, and then as soon as the next day comes in, that's day two. The next day comes in, that's day three. Even though as far as 24-hour periods go, you only have 2 days and a bit, but it's going to count as 3 days because the first day, miktsas hayom kekula, part of the day counts as that day. So the halacha is that in order for a stalk, a grain, to be considered that it had taken root, it has to be in the ground for halachically 3 days. And so that's what this halacha is going to bring about, or talk about. Hamanachesh b'shlosh on the 13th day of Nisan, that's 2 days, not the day before Pesach, but the day before that, the 13th of Nisan, somebody was pruning, weeding through their wheat field or through their barley field, whatever it may be, their grain field. And as he was doing so, one stalk of wheat got pulled up with its root, with the bulb around it. It got pulled up. Well, not a full bulb, because then it would be considered as if it's still attached to the ground. But the roots and the stalk came up together with the root, and he now wants to put it back in so that it can take root and be counted as permissible grains when the omer is brought. So so he has to put it back into a soft ground so that it can take root within these few days. But you can't put it into a thicker, a drier clay soil, because that's going to be too thick, and the roots will not take root in 3 days. Now, the Gemara analyzes, why did we say this halacha? Why did Rabbi Yehuda say this halacha particularly on the 13th day of Nisan? He could have said it on the 14th day of Nisan as well, and you'll still have the 3 days. Well, how so? Mechti. We know Rabbi Yehuda says that anything that you plant that doesn't take root in 3 days is not going to take root. Now, if we count the 14th day as day 1, that's the day that he replanted this stalk. The 15th day, the first day of Pesach, that's day 2. The 16th day of Pesach is day 3. Now, even though at some point in the morning and midday of the 16th day is when they're going to bring the Omer offering, it's okay, because that's already going to be 3 days, because you have Miktsas Hayom Kekula. Part of 14th day counts as day 1, the 15th day, and part of the 16th day counts as day 3. And so you have 3 days for this to take root. Now, and if Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that the 14th day, you're allowed to do work, at least in some places, so why do you have to say the case is talking about on the 13th day? You have the 14th and 15th, and part of the 16th. The Rabbi says, you're right. He says in Yehuda, in Judea, you're allowed to do work because that's where they did work. But in Galil, they held that it was prohibited in work. And so therefore, since there are some places that they held that it was prohibited in work, they wouldn't do the work. And so Yehuda set a scenario, which would work for the Galil as well. And Mar says, but it could be that the night before he could do the work of the 14th, meaning it doesn't have to be the 13th on the day of the 13th. It could be the 14th after he checks his house for chametz. That night, he goes in and replants that stalk that had come out, and that would also count. Amar of Sheshers could be Shammai. Well, perhaps it's like Beis Shammai, who says that you're not allowed to do the work that night. Rav Ashi said, no, we don't follow the halacha of Beis Shammai, so why would we do that? Mention halacha according to Beis Shammai, it's according to Beis Hillel, but nevertheless, he didn't mention the 14th at night, because that's not common that someone's walking out to his field to replant some stalks in middle of the night. That's not what people are doing. They're not weeding and replanting at night. Ravina and Ravina says, no, we're talking about it in Yehuda. And it's true that he's allowed to work on the 14th day, but it's still not going to count as 3 days. Because you have to have the plant actually take root. You can have it 2 24-hour periods plus one a little bit of the third day, that would count. But to say on the 14th, part of the 14th day is going to count because he planted sometime on the 14th, and then the 15th and the 16th, some of the morning is going to count. So mixas ayim kakula here, part of the day counts as if it's a full day over here, and part of the day counts as a full day over there. but you actually don't even have a 48-hour period, and the roots just won't take place. It won't take root, and you wouldn't say it in regards to this matter. The next Mishnah deals with what kind of work you're allowed to do on the 14th. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says that any work that you began on the 12th, 13th, leading up to the 14th day of Nisan, you can complete the work. When Rabbi Meir, who said that you're allowed to work on the 14th, it means to complete jobs that needed to be completed. But don't start a new job. Meaning if you had plowed the field and it's not completed, you had seeded the field, it's not completed, you had started the tanning of some leathers and you didn't complete it, so you can complete it on the 14th. But don't start a new project on the 14th, on the day before Pesach. And even if you could complete it prior to Yontif, so it's just a relatively small job. You look and say, look, it's just a small patch over there. I'm going to go ahead and plow that or seed it, or this is just a little bit of leather. I can tan it. It doesn't make a difference. You don't start a new project on the 14th. And the Chachamim say that there are 3 jobs that go ahead and work proper on the morning of until Chatzos, until midday on Erev Pesach. And these are them: the tailors, vasaparim, and barbers, vakoivsim, and launderers. Rabbi Yehuda says even cobblers, leather people that are taking care of shoes and leather also work on the morning of Pesach. In the morning of Erev Pesach. This that it said in the Mishnah. Now Rabbi Meir said, on the 14th, you can complete a job. Is he talking about things that are needed for Yontif or things that are not needed for Yontif? If he's talking about things that are needed for Yontif, then that would mean that if you don't need it for Yontif, you don't need it for Pesach, then you actually may not even complete it. Or perhaps, no, he's talking about even if you don't need it for Yontif. But since you began, you're allowed to complete it. And then maybe I can deduce and say, but if it's something you need for Yontif, you can even begin a new, you realize you need a new shirt, a new pants, a new skirt, whatever it may be for Yontif. So you can sit down and start cutting and sewing to make it for Yontif. Start the project that morning and complete it because if you can, because you need it for Yontif. But if you need it for Yontif, you can even begin a new project. Or perhaps, since the Mishnah didn't mention anything about whether you need it for Yontif or not, that there's no difference. Whether you need it for Yontif or not, migmar gabrinan, you can complete it in aschuli, but you do not start a new project. So it didn't mention in our Mishnah whether it's for Yontif or not. Perhaps only for Yontif can you complete a job. But not for Yontif, you can't even complete. Or the extreme opposite, it's not about Yontif, but if you need it for Yontif, you can even start a new job. Or there's no distinction. Whether you need it for Yontif or not, if you started beforehand, you can complete it on the 14th. If you didn't start it beforehand, you cannot complete it. You cannot start it. Tashima. So we're going to come and prove it from a brisa that says, you do not start on the 14th, Barbasa. Afilu tziltzul katan, even if you're just making a small sash. Afilu sichva katana, even if you're just making a small cap. My afilu, what does it mean even? Lav afilu hani do tzarech hamayid. And wouldn't you say even these things which are needed for Yontif, nevertheless you're not allowed to start it and migmar in a schuli loy, that you can complete it, but you're not allowed to start it. And from that, we could perhaps deduce, since I picked these two items, a sash and a cap, which may be needed for Yontif, would indicate that if you don't need something for Yontif, you can't even complete it, even if you had started. So Gemara says, no proof. Perhaps if it's not for Yantiv, you're still allowed to complete it if you had started the project prior. What does it mean even? Even these things, that making a sash is pretty small, making a cap, that's small jobs. As soon as you start it, you're basically finishing it. And so perhaps you could start it and you can finish it. So you can start it because that is like finishing it. It just takes a few moments. Nami, nami. So you can go ahead and start it. Kamash Milan. That's why he says no. Even such small items, you're not allowed to start a new project on Erev Yantiv. Tashama, Rabbi Meir. So we're gonna try and prove this. Tashama, come in here. Rabbi Meir Rabbi Meir says anything that's needed for Yantiv. Goimra, and now we go to the top of Nun Hey Amud Beis to 55b. Rabbi Meir says Goimra bar ba'asa. You can complete it on the 14th, even in a place that the custom is not to do work on Erev Yantiv. You're allowed to complete it. But that's true only if you began on the 14th. But if you did not begin before the 14th, and the custom is not to do work on the 14th, so then you can't start. So you can't start on the 14th. Even if he's making a small sash, a small cap, but here it clearly said, in this brisa, it clearly stated that the distinction is, if you need it for Yantiv, you can do it. If you don't need it for Yantiv, and the custom is not to work on the 14th, you can't do it. So the Gemara says, look, no, perhaps the brisa is not being precise. And even the truth is, even if you don't need it for Yantiv, you're allowed to complete it. So why did it mention if you need it for Yantiv? But the inference from the brisa is this: if you need it for Yantiv, then you're allowed to complete it, but not start. You cannot start on the 14th a new project, even if you need it for Yantiv. That's the inference. Even if you need it for Yantiv, you can only complete a project that you had started beforehand. But if you don't, even if you don't need it for Yantiv, you can complete a project that you started beforehand. It's just the inference of the brisa is the reason it mentions that you need it for Yantiv is to tell you that only that it says you can only complete a job if you started before the 14th and not start a job on the 15th, start this project on the 14th. You can't start the project. It's coming to tell you that even if you need it for Yantiv, you can't start a new project. Tashamasa, we'll try and prove it from this price. Rabbi Meir, here it says explicitly, Rabbi Meir says that if the custom is not to do work, then a job, a malacha that you need for Yantiv, you can complete on the 14th. And if you don't need it for Yantiv, then it's prohibited. In a place that the custom is to do work on the 14th until midday, then you can do it. Now, makam shenaga in, leinagu lay. That's only if there's a custom to do work. But if not, I can't start a new job, even if I need it for Yantiv. That I can only complete it if I need it for Yantiv. If I don't need it for Yantiv, I cannot complete the work. Shmamina. So indeed, that would be proof that you can only start a job, you can only complete a job, you can't start it, and if you don't need it for Yantiv, then you can't even complete it. And this is in the places that the custom is not to work on Erev Yantiv. And the Chachamim said there are five particular jobs that someone's allowed to do. Three particular jobs, or a fourth that you're allowed to do on Erev Yantiv in regards to the needs of Yantiv. Now, for this section, we're going to introduce the Gemara of Moed Katan, which says that you're not allowed to do work on Chol HaMoed, besides for certain things that are needed for Yantiv, or it's a davar avid, it's a loss, and anything that you could have done before Yantiv and you didn't, there's a prohibition to do on Chol HaMoed. such as you're not allowed to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed because you should have and could have done it in advance of Yantif. So Tana, Hachayatin, why are tailors allowed to work on the 14th before Erev Pesach? Since Erev Pesach is the 14th, is going to be more lenient than a Chol Hamoed on the intermediate days of Yantif, and just like the intermediate days, a tailor is allowed to sew basic stitching on Chol Hamoed as he would normally do it. Shekain Hedya Tofer Kedaka B'Chol Hamoed, as the tailor is allowed to work a Chol Hamoed, and since he's allowed to do that, so Erev Yantif as well, which is more lenient, is also going to be allowed to do it. And similarly, Hasaparim, Vakayvsid, the tailor, the barbers and the launderers, because as we learned over there, that even though we said that you can't take a haircut on Chol Hamoed because you should have and could have taken it before Yantif, that's true if you could have. But somebody who was released from prison on Chol Hamoed was somebody who took a boat ride across the ocean, and they were delayed and arrived instead of before Yantiv, arrived on Chol Hamoed, and he couldn't take a haircut before Yantiv. So he actually has to take a haircut on Chol Hamoed, and he's allowed to. So for them, they're allowed to do, since on Chol Hamoed, they're allowed to do the work. So too, before Yantiv, on the 14th, they're allowed to do work. Because they're allowed to do the work on Chol Hamoed. John, what was the question?
So wouldn't that put people that work in those professions more at risk of not being ready for Chag?
Yeah, they'd have to plan better, and they have to be ready the day before. Correct. Yeah. So they would have to know that they're still working until midday. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer Afar Atzanim. Rabbi Yehuda says also the cobblers, those working with leather and shoes, because the halacha is that those that had come in the pilgrimage to Yerushalayim are allowed to have their shoes fixed on Chol Hamoed because they need shoes. So too Erev Yantiv. So b'maikam ipalgi. So what's the basis of machlokes? That seems right. So why would the Tanakama not say this? The one says, look, he can even start making a new shoe on the day before Yantif, just like he can fix shoes on Chol Hamoed. Because look, as long as a shop is open, he can do whatever is needed. And the others say, no, he can only repair shoes on Chol Hamoed because those people that had walked this long distance need them. But you can't start a new project, new shoes on Erev Yantif, and so therefore you can't just give a blanket statement that they can work on Erev Yantif. The next Mishnah will begin, and we won't get through everything, but let's see what we can do. You can place a hen on the eggs, or put back the hen on the eggs if it ran away, in order for them to incubate, even on the 14th. In Mesa, and if the hen died, you can put another one in its place, another hen on these eggs, in order for them to incubate. Another halacha, you're allowed to, on the 14th day, go to your backyard and shovel up from behind the animals, so the animal waste from behind the animals on the 14th. But on Chol Hamoed, you can't remove it, but you can just push it off to the side. You're allowed to bring vessels to the smith to fix them, and you're allowed to pick them up, even if you don't need them for Yantiv itself. And so Matzah Shabbos will go through the Gemara's and analysis of this Mishnah of things that you're allowed to do on Erev Yantiv and Chol Hamoed. Wishing you a great Shabbos, and we'll see you then half hour after Shabbos.